Good afternoon, and welcome to Project Geospatial. We're doing a summary today of how a few of us felt about the GEOINT Symposium 2025. I'm Karyn Hayes-Ryan. I'm from Waterpoint. I serve as a principal there, and I consult. Shawana?
Hi, I'm Shawana Johnson. I run a company called Global Marketing Insights. We provide highly specialized, customized research to the geospatial industry to help commercial companies cross over into the government and the intelligence community, as well as we help bridge technology from the government and the intelligence community out to the commercial world.
And I'm Joe Calamari. I'm a product manager with CACI, supporting the NGA's corporate business systems.
So let's get started with Joe. So you went to GEOINT this year as a Golden Ticket winner. Do you want to explain a little bit about what that is and how you enjoyed your time?
Sure, yeah. So the Golden Ticket program is a program put on by USGIF, and basically they take a bunch of applicants, usually younger professionals. I think it is younger than 35 or less than 5 years in the field. And so you get put into a pool and they review your applicants. They pick about 20 of their favorite ones. So I was lucky enough to get picked this year. Me along with, I think it was 21 other people my age. And so we get a little bit of a different experience than what a typical corporate experience might be there. So we get, walked around, we get to see different presentations. We get a lot of one-on-one time with a lot of former leaders, former senior executives at the NGA. And it's just a time for us to ask questions, kind of bounce ideas off of them, get kind of feedback on where we're at our careers as we're starting off, aspiring to be something like them one day. So it was really a really fun experience, and it was great to engage with a lot of my peers that I normally wouldn't see, outside of my program, outside my company, who are all kind of on the same track as me.
So Joe, you've been to several GEOINTs actually, despite you being a young professional. How did this experience differ from the other years that you've gone?
Sure. Yeah. So in the past, I've gone with Project Geospatial actually as an intern, doing a lot of on-site interviews for companies. And so there, the first year I came with them, I actually had no idea what the word GEOINT meant. So it was an eye-opening experience the first time around. And so it was great. We get to talk to all these different companies. Usually we do interviews with maybe 20, 30, 40 different companies there. And so you kind of take in like the bird's eye view of the industry, kind of a snapshot at that time of the year. And so it was really fun it was a great way to learn basically the whole industry, kind of understand who's playing a part and, how different companies partner with each other to tackle certain problems. So it was really interesting. So that was about 4 years, I think I've been going to GEOINT in that capacity. And so this year was brand new experience for me now. So I got to see it from a different perspective, a little more behind the scenes, talking to some of those people that normally I'm sitting behind the camera listening to. Now I got to talk to them one-on-one. So it was a fun experience. It was great.
What was I've had a couple of Golden Ticket winners when they were college interns for my organization were selected, and they always learned something new that I could tell because they repeated it in the future. Did you get any major takeaways, even though this wasn't your first time? And being there with CACI, what was a big learning experience or takeaway for you?
The main thing I took away was the past experience of all the one-on-one mentors that we got to chat with. It was interesting seeing how everyone got to the same place. So they all had come from very different backgrounds, all had very different experiences early on, some of which were geospatial related, others were press and media related. And they all kind of converged in the same industry. So it was interesting for me because, as I mentioned earlier, we support a lot of the corporate business systems at NGA, not necessarily a lot of the GEOINT systems. So even then, I'm still trying to learn about some of the imagery language. And so it's not just like the door shut on that, I'm stuck in this swim lane doing HR and timesheets. It's interesting to see how the career paths kind of shift over, 15, 20, 30 years. And you all kind of end up back at the same spot again.
So Shawana, you said you sent several interns into the Golden Ticket program. How did that work for you with your company?
So usually, because we're so market research focused and only in geospatial, so we never step out, and it's global, but we never step outside of that arena of geospatial technology. So typically they would have already been writing papers, developing posters. They've all attended conferences, and they do this immediately when they, I had one intern say one time, she was very young and she just started, and she said, "Oh my God, I thought I'd be filing paper clips. This is hard." I said, "Filing paper clips? No, we don't even use paper clips." So we start them off with a big lift right away, because this is an analytical industry. So by the time they're ready to fill out the application for the Golden Ticket, they typically have had several, like you, Joe, geospatial experiences to point to. And I think that's really the interesting piece that helps them get selected, because they've already done some work in the industry. They understand the terminology. And many years ago in the application, they used to say, "What do you want to learn most?" And that was always interesting, what my applicants wrote, because they had really specific things they were trying to figure out in their career and where they wanted to go. And did they want to work in the intelligence side, or did they want to stay in the federal civil side, or did they want to purely go commercial? So they loved it, bar none. They liked the best the networking events. So they liked the fact, just exactly what Joe said, you were there with 21 of your peers that normally you wouldn't be able to spend time with. And my one intern that was a Golden Ticket winner, she's now a runtime development manager at Esri. So she runs a really big segment of runtime capabilities for them. And she's still in contact with 4 people that were all Golden Ticket winners from that time frame. So I urge you to, stay in touch with them and just send them a note every now and then to see what they're doing, because those relationships will last a really long time.
Have you stayed in contact with any of the other Golden Ticket winners that you've put through the program?
For me, I stay in contact with everyone, because we have a database of 1.7 million contacts globally. And that's kind of our job. So our job is not to lose track of people that are in the industry, because they're the folks that we turn to when we have the research to do. So literally, I can look them all up. I can tell you where they're working, what they're doing, well, the last time we touched them, so to speak, because they're all turning 30 this year, which is kind of interesting. So one of them is actually coming back to Ohio from McLean, Virginia, on next Tuesday. And she told me I said, "What do you want to do for your birthday?" And she picked out this restaurant that you have to get the reservation 6 months ahead of time. So I managed to get the reservation set. And so she'll be here on Tuesday. She's the one from Esri. That's the senior developer for runtime for them. And so we do everything we can to stay in touch with them, because they're now managers and they're moving into the executive management framework, and they've got their finger on the pulse of what's really happening, technically speaking. So we try to keep in touch with all of them. Everybody unfortunately knows if they meet me, they go into the database. So.
Yeah, I think that was the number one piece of advice they gave us walking away, was stay in contact, stay in touch with everyone. I know even the 2 of the presenters at one of the main stage sessions, they were both, in the same Golden Ticket cohort together, and now they're up on stage talking about their own companies that they're starting. So it was really cool to see that, the future basically down the line.
Very cool.
But I was not the only one that had a unique experience here. I think a lot of people had a unique experience at this GEOINT with the NGA's presence there and how that kind of changed from years past. So, Karyn, from your perspective, what did you see that was a little bit different?
Yeah, so the NGA presence, and I don't want to say lack thereof, because even though there was uncertainty for the longest time, I think they showed up with a great presence, but it was a different presence than normal. It was but the key leaders that came in, the director, the deputy director of NGA, the director of capabilities, Trey Treadwell, was there and actually gave a great presentation for industry on how to do business with NGA and how we still want to do business with you. Mark Shadowling was there. He gave a presentation with a team of folks, which is different than he normally would do a CIO presentation with CIOs from other intel agencies. That was always standing room only. But it was still a very good presentation on where NGA is moving from an IT perspective. It was very interesting to talk a little bit about the evolution, which is going to lead to the new organization at NGA. A lot more attendees from St. Louis, just being mindful of travel expenses. I think it was great for them to get a different experience. But I think other people were a little sad to not see some of the regular folks that they had. But as Shawana and I were talking earlier today, we were talking about how without having as much government executive presence, the industry to industry conversations were much more in depth. There was signing of non-disclosure agreements, or at least sending them across. Getting ready for teaming, talking about specific bids and percentages, for primes and subs. It was a lot more detailed in the business to business side. Some of my clients were very excited. I had companies coming for their first time, not knowing that normally there's a greater NGA presence normally, and still being overwhelmed with how exciting it was to be able to see and hear from so many great NGA personnel, as well as the business to business. What about you, Shawana? How was yours?
So I thought it was a great conference. I enjoyed the symposium. I am always really busy there because we plan everything ahead of time. I did 2 training sessions, advanced technology. They were full, and most of the time we get 5 to 10 attendees, and the training sessions are, you have to pay to attend, and that money goes to the US Geospatial Intelligence Foundation. And that money is then used across a variety of resources to help the Golden Ticket program or many other scholarships, things like that. So when those training sessions are at a cost, it's not anyone speaking that is getting the fee. It's for the actual foundation, academic foundation itself. Well, those sessions were full, and we had many attendees from NGA St. Louis. They had good questions. They were attentive. They got to the classes on time. They stayed the whole time, and they were just very engaging. And that's unusual because most of the time you get maybe one person from the intelligence community and NGA, just one. And rarely do you get as many people from the military. And we had several Air Force and Marines also in the room that were analysts learning about these new technologies. So I think the venue, and there's many of these training sessions. So the training takes place all day on Monday, all day on Tuesday, and part of the day on Wednesday. And I was talking to everyone across the training sessions, and they were all really good. No one had less than 25 people in a session. So I think the government showed up maybe in a different way than they have in the past. I also think the tours that they offered, and they had them scheduled all day long where you could go tour the new NGA facility. That was exceptionally well received. And people told me normally they would never have taken the time to go take the tour. And that because they knew there weren't as many NGA representatives as normal, they took some time to go really look at the new facility, and they met people on the buses and how they were chartered over there and in the vans. They met people they would not have met anyway. So it was a really good networking opportunity. So I think overall, from an NGA perspective, they should be very pleased. The group of people that came were very focused in what they were doing. And so it was not at all, I didn't feel like I was missing anything. I'm like you, I think the business to business piece of it was exceptional. This week and next week, I have probably 15 follow-up meetings for people that met each other, and they're trying to come to an agreement about how to work together so they can do proposals together, so that maybe they can bid on projects. And these weren't just government projects, they were AEC industry projects with a lot of visualization, digital twin development projects. So I thought it went great.
It's funny you touched on the emphasis on learning there, because this was actually the first year I did get to attend a training session. Like that, most years I'm out on the floor talking to people. And so as part of the program, they gave us 2 training sessions for free. So one of them was defending these new AI systems that we have, a lot of the LLMs from bad actors, which I thought was really interesting. But I mean, I got in there, it was packed. I just thought that's how it was. I was like, this is gold, for $35 or whatever it is. This is great. But yeah, I didn't realize that, in years past, it was a little less attended.
Or in some cases, attended, and then people were rushing out to either catch a different briefing or catch another meeting. And so it wasn't the full-blown attention necessarily.
Yeah. I completely agree with that statement, because you always have something in your mind. I've got to go to next, or this is on my calendar. It was a gentler, kinder, gentler time of listening and paying really substantial amounts of attention. But I did not notice the showroom floor was not as crowded. However, I did not think it was empty at all. I thought the demos, the lightning talks, the innovation hub, the government hub, and the Vista hub, I thought the Vista hub was also, all of those hubs were always at capacity. And I thought they had really good speakers. Even when it was the lightning talk speakers, they were very engaging, and you learned something from every single person. So I think people also came really prepared and ready to deliver valuable information so that the audience could have a takeaway.
Those lightning talks, you're right, because a couple of times I went, I want to see this one. And I would get up and leave when it was over, just a few minutes long. And then I'd hear the next speaker starting to talk. And I'm like, oh, wait, this is cool. And I found myself lingering. And I thought you could spend the whole time just sitting there listening to these and learning and growing from them.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. Those were fascinating. I also thought, with the floor being a little less crowded, the demonstrations were more detailed. Mm-hmm. The company would be there doing a demonstration of their product, and more people would come up, but it wasn't them breaking away like, let me go talk to you about some other business over here. The demos were really drawing people in, and they were a lot more attentive as things were going on.
We had several, we recommended to several of our clients and just our friends in the industry. If you've never been to a GEOINT symposium, you should go and just buy a one-day exhibit hall only pass, because for me, I thought this would be the year to do it, because you'll get to spend time with the vendors, you'll get to see the lay of the land in the hall. And the lay of the land in the hall gives you a good lay of the land about the industry on that side of the house. This is how many advanced analytics companies there are. This is how many AI. This is how many satellite. Here's some conglomerate aerial companies. I mean, it tells you a lot about how business is done. We had like 10 or 15 show up. They had never been to a GEOINT symposium. They loved it. And a couple of them had only other geospatial organizations to compare it to. And they said, this is nothing like being part of these geospatial organizations. I said, no, this is an industry. This is truly a representation of the industry. Overall, just completely successful because they understood what the lay of the land was. They figured out where they fit in. And I had a newly hired college grad that had just taken a job with one of these companies, aerial and advanced analytics company. And he was with me. So if you saw a young man by my side the whole time, that was the deal. I said, well, I'm going to take you with me. And part of that will be training because I'm going to introduce you to a bunch of people. And he says, okay, I'm overwhelmed by the amount of people already we've met. But he loved exactly what you said, going to the booths and the demos. The demos were so thorough. You could ask questions. The deliverers of all the companies' booths, they had their chief intelligence officer there. They had their product development manager there. You were talking to the people that could really answer your questions. And this young man was a computational math physics graduate from Ohio University. And he was engaging in ways that I don't know, had it been so reversed to the way it usually is with so many more government attendees, I don't know that he would have had the time to do that. And I've heard that statement over and over again from multiple individuals.
So I've only been going, I think this is my 5th year now, I guess. Over the years, I know this last year was a little bit different, but where have you guys seen the focus shift from, let's say a decade ago at GEOINT? Has there been any major shift that you've seen?
I think there's revolutionary shifts regularly. I think as for a while it was on geospatial tools, techniques, training, and it started to include the newest technologies. There was a big focus for a while on the satellite companies, commercial satellites that were coming in. Then it was on, they've evolved to include AI and other things, big data, you name it. As in fact, one of the things I heard from a couple of the people that were new to GEOINT was, why are some of these cloud companies here? How are clouds part of the geospatial industry? And I'm like, well, they're the fabric. But yeah, but they're not just that. And I'm like, but you have to build a team, and your whole technology stack includes all of those pieces. So they were surprised to see some of those larger infrastructure companies, cloud companies, who aren't just focused on geospatial. But then I challenged them and said, well, what isn't geospatial? When you start looking at things, everything happens in a time or a place. So if you're capturing data, time of data, place of data, all of these different aspects, they do have a tie to GEOINT. And there are specific algorithms that cloud companies and analytic companies bring in when they are deploying to one of these geospatial agencies, as well as the commercial side.
I would agree with everything you said. We've seen those big shifts. This year, we really started to see on the showroom floor and in the training session, the result now of a decade of AI and algorithms and data modeling. So now we've had some good time at data modeling where we've put so much data against these models, the models are truly creating some capabilities with AI that are on target and quality solutions, where it takes a while. And that's exactly now what we're seeing the fruit of. And it's very specific. So whether it's a synthetic aperture radar image, or it's a light image detection and ranging image, LiDAR, if it's multispectral, whatever the data sources were, everywhere, and everybody kind of has their specialty because data's hard. I saw the real results in the analytics and the speed at which things were being produced, and the fact that I could tell we had a much closer solution that really would help a human being move forward faster. And a lot of that was demonstrated with some of the Russia-Ukraine conflict data, whether it was drone or aerial or satellite, as well as using push-to-talk radios and SATCOM radios, because of all the nefarious interference and jamming and spoofing that was going on while they were utilizing drone technology. So I think we're now at a place where all the things that Karyn discussed that we've seen highlighted over the years are really coming into a solutions focus. And now an analyst will be able to really say, I have my experience, and just can't say enough about an individual's experience on something they've studied for a long time in their career. But now they're going to have so many more support tools that can be trusted. I think we're moving up the scale in trust.
Yeah, I think even in just my short time, it's been interesting to see a lot of people talking about AI for the last few years, and this year was really the first year I saw, it being applied almost everywhere. I couldn't turn a direction where I didn't see an AI demo going on. A lot of these multimodal models popping up. Half of the training sessions I felt like had some aspect of AI integrated with them.
Right.
Yeah, I thought it's really coming to fruition now, and I think it is just the beginning. It feels like so. It'll be really exciting in years to come. Other than, sorry, Ken, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say. So I think we covered a lot without highlighting any particular company's capabilities. But I think maybe it's time to talk a little bit about some of the keynote speakers. I think we're allowed to single those out by name. Were there any that really stood out? Joe, as a golden ticket holder, didn't you go to all of those keynotes? Or did you? Okay. So were there any that really stood out to you? And it's not to cast aspersion on the ones that you don't mention. You don't have to list everybody.
Yeah, the most prominent one was Director Gabbard coming in to speak, and it was funny just to see the audience's attention shift when she entered. I know a lot of people weren't sure if it was going to happen or not, and she made it happen. I heard just in the nick of time, so that was great. And she was also able to go out on the floor and speak to a lot of people, see a lot of demos. So I think her presence there just had a lot more focus than maybe some of the other keynote speakers. Not saying they weren't as good, but she was definitely a heavy hitter, lately.
I think it's a tradition to have the DNI or the PD DNI participate at the GEOINT Symposium, and I think I agree with you. I thought it was people. I know I was dealing with a lot of people saying, "Well, she's going to record a message, right?" I think she's coming. And I think, how the questions and answers came out, I thought it was fair and inspirational. How about you, Shawana?
People on the showroom floor were really delighted. They were delighted that she came with enough time to she had a prepared group of people she wanted to see if they were there. And then she randomly stopped at a couple places. She actually said, I've seen this product. I didn't know it was your company. So, and she stated then in the keynote that, hey, listen, I've learned some things here in the short time I was on the showroom floor. I found this and this and this, and I didn't even know it was produced by individuals in this specific community. I think it was very uplifting to those individuals that were able to specifically engage with her. And also she took pictures with anyone that came up to her and wanted to take a picture. And I had to laugh because I was watching this from, I was in the same aisle and I was watching the pictures take place, and I had to think back, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, 15, maybe. General Clapper was one of my bosses. So long before he was the DNI. So he's the DNI. We're in GEOINT San Antonio, and I see him and I go running up to him to say hello. And I literally almost got taken out by his Secret Service. He put his hand up and went, "Stop, don't." And I thought to myself, what a difference. Here she is, putting her arm around somebody, taking selfies. Holy mackerel, with all the signs that say no photography, there were selfies going on, pictures being taken. I think that's a good thing for people in a time when there's just a lot of uncertainty and frustration because things are taking a long time. And also my big takeaway from her keynote was, I'm telling you the truth. Right now, Congress there are no cuts to the geospatial budget. Now can change. I think she's very honest, but she says today, what happens in this community in particular is very well known. We have members in the Office of Management and Budget. We have members of Congress that are on committees. And for the first time ever, they are geospatially aware, and they're experts in some cases. And Karyn, you and I both know, and we can tell you, Joe, that's not always been the case. We've been called into brief when I can tell you they couldn't spell geospatial and they did not know what it was for. And here it's something we've been using for 30 years already. So I thought that was very encouraging message overall. And it added a good amount of oomph, I think, and some vitality to the whole day.
Yeah, I can actually remember, Joe, when I would use the word geospatial in a presentation to some of our oversight on the Hill even, and they asked if it was a made-up word.
Yep.
So way back, nothing you would ever have to experience, Joe. But yeah, it was that's true. And I think it really went well. And I know some of the other speakers, congressmen, generals, the director and deputy director of NGA telling their story of where things are headed right now, not just with the new administration changes, but as the missions within NGA start to evolve, the growth in the south of the border mission, the mineral and battery missions that they are picking up. And you can see from an industry perspective, they're putting out solicitations on these new mission areas. So I think the budget is definitely not only not shrinking in the geospatial world, I think it's growing.
And they called out programs. They called out Luno A and Luno B. They called out real programs for the entire audience and the world to hear about, and talked about the commercial crossover from those programs, just like you said. And that was very, lots of note-taking going on. And I just was looking at people around me, big smiles on people's faces that are involved in our primes and subs. So it was, and the speaking, I thought the conversations were very well prepared, just very thoughtful, good delivery. I didn't walk out of one session thinking, oh, what an incredible waste of time that was. And, we've all been to those, right? I try to make sure that doesn't happen in my sessions, but it's going to at some point in time. And they were all just right on top of things, well prepared, and really good information.
Yeah, I think it was clear that they knew their audience, and it wasn't a rehashed speech from the presentation they gave the week before. I thought it was really very clear and very precise. What about Joe? Were you able to see the mission side, where the director of analysis and the deputy director of source, Shelby Pearson and Tracy Maloney, spoke?
I must have missed that one. They did have, had a very busy schedule.
They were at the government hub, so I don't know if you guys were allowed. And there's such limited seating anyway. I think if the class, your cohort had been there, it might have been a riot from all the other people that wanted to hear. But I think they did a really good job of setting forth not just some timelines for industry to be cognizant of, but where those new mission areas were explicitly. And they were pretty open. They were moving around the hall pretty well. And I think they got some good face time with some of their existing vendors, but also some new ones who were really excited for that opportunity.
And I think they made it very clear they need everybody. This is not, someone actually said, I think it was the deputy director, said, this is not the same pool party that you were invited to years ago. And I thought, oh, okay, amen. And they said, we can't succeed if we don't reach out to a broader community. And then they said, you're all it. That's a pretty clear message.
Yeah. So I know we only have a couple minutes left, but I wanted to get your thoughts on your key takeaways. I know we just talked about a lot of the keynote speakers and what they had touched on, but what was the one thing that both of you had walked away with going forward?
I would say that I think industry paid a lot more attention to their partners, their competitors, and tried really hard to shape teams that they could support the missions in response to the conversations that were held at the symposium, as well as what the leaders did in their keynotes. I thought the industry to industry engagement was the highest I've ever seen it.
I think one of my takeaways was about the geospatial workforce. We're running a major, it's in the top of my mind these days, we're running a major study on the geospatial workforce for about 10 major geospatial organizations: MAPS, ASPRS, ERISA, GISP, you name it. And it'll be released sometime this year. We've had personally interviewed and survey responses from about 500 members of the community, 2/3 employees and 1/3 companies, management, so to speak. And what I saw in terms of workforce, I was thinking before we went there that we might just see a lot of people looking for jobs that had left the government service. I did see a few of those, but very few. What I was really encouraged by was most of the people that we spoke to, and of course we had a mission to engage for this because of the research we're doing. But what I was so encouraged by was more people, Joe, like you, and in your age bracket, in your field of interest. And they were very engaged with the community and want to stay in the community. And that doesn't matter to me whether they're on the federal civil or the intelligence community side, the Department of Defense, or the commercial side. They wanted to be engaged. I will say almost all of them discussed artificial intelligence as well as the analytics. They aren't as interested in whether it's aerial or spaceborne data or just some other type of data inputs, but they were very clear on the analytics and AI capabilities they wanted to engage in. Well, that was very encouraging to me because we need that type of support and that type of interest. So that was my big woohoo.
How about you, Joe?
I don't know if it's me getting a little bit older, but it did certainly feel like a lot more people in my age bracket were in attendance, which is really interesting to see because at first I felt like a kid. I felt like a kid kind of walking around the showroom floor. But now I do feel that kind of engagement now, being able to talk to my peers about, different projects that they have going on and different work that they're looking at. So it's a lot more welcoming environment now, I think. But
Good.
I appreciate you both for such a great conversation. I know we all had a great time at GEOINT. And we probably will next year. Hopefully everyone's going back next year. But yeah. So thank you both, and thanks everyone for watching.
All right. Thank you.